Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm talking about 10 principles that'll help you improve your animations. All 10 of these principles came out of this book right here, the Disney Animation The Illusion of Life. It's a really good book. You can read it. I would recommend reading it. I wouldn't say you have to read all of it, but it's a pretty big book, but the first couple chapters is really good. Really recommend reading that. But anyway, that's what this video is about. I'm going to be talking about 10 principles that they discuss in this book, and I'm going to show you how to incorporate those in your LEGO animations specifically. So how to improve your LEGO animations. The first concept I want to talk about is follow-through. Follow-through basically is anything that you do has weight to it. So nothing ever comes to a dead stop instantly. You're going to have to take a second to stop. Nothing in nature will stop an instant. When a car brakes, it doesn't do it all at once, or else you'd fly out the window. It gradually comes to a halt. And that's what follow through is all about. If someone goes in for a punch, they keep going after they punch somebody. Their fist keeps moving after they punch somebody. It doesn't just stop. Alright, for follow through, the very first animation I'm showing you here is what would happen if Indiana Jones punched this Russian without any follow through. I'll skim through the frames here. You can see he just starts from a dead stop and then stops. So he starts and stops without any follow through or any sort of wind up. He just punches him. And it doesn't look too bad, right? It doesn't look terrible, but it can look better. So here is what it looked like with a little bit of wind up and a lot of follow through. So he follows through with his punch afterwards. His punch conveyed gravity. See, whenever he hits the Russian, his fist continues to go. And that is what I mean when I say follow through. So add that to your animations and it'll look a lot more lifelike. Second thing I'll talk about is exaggeration. So exaggeration is used to make things more clear, to emphasize the motions that you want to emphasize and to not emphasize the ones you don't want to. Exaggeration also gives character to your character. Get it? Exaggeration really is to exaggerate movement so that the motion is unmistakably clear, and it will also give your characters a certain type of feel, whether they're cartoony or real, or it'll give them a characteristic that you can attribute to them. So Indiana Jones looks pretty real right here when he punches him, but this looks very cartoony when Tweety Bird whacks Sylvester on the head. It looks very exaggerated, and that's kind of the point. Because I was going for a cartoony look. So when Tweety Bird jumps in the air and then slams down the broom on his head, that was supposed to look cartoony. Third principle I want to talk about is a little less interesting. It's just basically don't do the same movement on both arms. They don't move at the same rate at the same speed and everything. And when I mean no copy movements, no double movements, you kind of see here I have Sylvester's hand here and his hand over here. You don't want their hands to be in the same spot. Obviously, whenever they're standing, that's fine, but you want them to look different because nothing is the same in nature. Fourth thing I talk about is squash and stretch. So a lot of you probably have heard of squash and stretch. You've probably seen it in action before and in stop motions. But it's a very important principle, and you need to make sure you keep that in mind whenever you're doing your animations. In this book, they tell you to treat things as a half-filled flour sack. So squash it and stretch it, basically. Now here's an example of squash and stretch. So Tweety jumps up in the air and smashes Sylvester on the head. Whenever the broom hits Sylvester on the head, it's got a lot of force to it. So you can see I squished his legs. I replaced his legs with 1x2 white plates and a 1x2 black plate. You could have done more squash and stretch, but I didn't think that was necessary for this occasion. I was going for a very more realistic, cartoony look for Sylvester. Here's another example of squash and stretch. Spider-Man jumps in the air. Fifth thing I talk about is anticipation. So you can anticipate a movement that's going to happen. If something just happens all of a sudden, you're going to miss it, and then you're going to miss the joke, and then the person watching it won't get it, You need to anticipate the movement. The person needs to know what's going to happen before it even happens. So that's anticipation. You also can have anticipation as being the wind-up that a batter uses when he bats the baseball. Is also an example of anticipation and overlapping action. So anticipation, you're anticipating the movement whenever he winds up for the jump. At this moment, you know he's going to jump. And it's also the secondary action because he's flinging his arms in the air as he's jumping in the air at the same time. So that's two actions at once, which also gives better anticipation. It also shows squash and stretch. As he reaches the top, he stretches. You can see Spider-Man stretches. I pull him apart a little bit to make him look like he is longer. A lot of you probably have seen like the little ball graphs they show you for stop motion, the way the ball starts and stops and squishes. This is the same principle. Basically, as Spider-Man's falling, he stretches, and as he gets down to the bottom, he squashes. The fifth principle is staging. Staging is the presentation of an idea so that it is unmistakably clear. So whatever you're going to do, make sure it's clear. It's very simple. Simple as that. If you want the subject in the foreground, you want the subject to be in focus, and you want nothing to distract you from the subject. It needs to be straight on. Okay, the next principle I want to talk about is overlapping action or secondary action. So basically, it means that you're going to do two actions at once, two or more actions at once. So whenever your person goes to sip tea or coffee out of a mug, they lean back and their other arm goes back, That is an example of overlapping action. Two actions at once that give the character more life and more feel and more appeal. The eighth thing I'll talk about is proper arcs. Arcs are really important for any animation. It gives a nice fluid motion. You don't want your guy's arm to go choo, choo, choo. You don't want him to go like really robotic in a square. Most people are organic. When you're animating a regular person, it's organic feeling. It's fluid, moves and things like that. I'm swishing my arm around like a crazy person. Now, the ninth thing I want to talk about is timing. Timing is crucial. You don't want any scene to be too long. You don't want it to be too short. You have to be able to get the information from that scene before you move on, or else you're going to lose the person in the story you're trying to tell. I once learned from Corridor Crew, which is a really great YouTube channel. You should check them out. They said to time each scene on a stopwatch as you're reading it. So say Barney walks through the door and says, "Happy birthday." You time how long it takes you to say that, and that's how long your scene's going to be. So you want proper timing for everything. And timing for animation also applies to how many frames it takes to tell that story, to tell that animation, to tell that movement. If it's just one frame, it's going to be very sharp and very hard, like someone gets hit by a car, very abrupt. If it's 10 frames to tell the story, or to tell the movement, it'll be a lot slower. It'll be like they're stretching a sore muscle, or they're looking around for something. Legolas is sitting on top of that rock, anxiously looking for the orcs that are behind them or in front of them. The 10th thing is appeal. So appeal is how a scene looks to the eye, whether it's visually appealing or emotionally compelling, whether you feel an emotion looking at it. A lot of times I think of Lord of the Rings. I think of Mordor, very dark and depressing, right? Because that's the way it looks. The opposite of that would be the Shire, very bright and peaceful. Whatever your scene is, it needs to also convey emotion and tell its own story in a way. And all animation is about, all movie making, cinema, filmmaking, is all about telling a story. Whatever it is, just do it to the best of your ability. I hope these tricks helped you guys, and that's going to wrap it up for today. Hope you guys enjoy this video, and we'll see you next time at Dynamic Productions. Thanks for watching.